What's up, guys, and welcome back into Breaking Boards. In today's episode, we're going to break down Sunday Night Football. We're going to look at the Baltimore Ravens traveling to take on the Buffalo Bills. This game total currently sits at 50.5, with Baltimore giving up 1.5 points. Baltimore has an implied team total of 27.5, and the Buffalo Bills has an implied team total of 24.5. This should be a great game of football for Sunday night. Glad to have you guys here joining me for the player-by-player breakdown. Can't wait to get into it. And without further ado, let's jump into that player-by-player breakdown over on DraftKings. The first player we're going to take a look at is going to be the Baltimore Ravens quarterback, Lamar Jackson. I think that Lamar is definitely in play at the captain position. He is actually going to be my second favorite captain overall. Don't mind him in large field or smaller field GPPs. And if you look here, he did play Buffalo twice last year. He put up 20.06 fantasy points in week 20, and in week 4, he put up 24.64 fantasy points. I think this is another game where he throws for a couple of touchdowns and probably runs one in as well. And you're probably looking at sitting somewhere in the 24 to 28 fantasy point range. Pulling up his captain ownership for tomorrow night, he's looking at about 25%. And with these rushing quarterbacks, I do look to be right around the field. I'll be about the 25% range. Again, he will be, if I'm putting in a 3 max set, he will be my second captain that goes in there. And then looking over in the flex for Lamar, he's going to be owned around 57, 58%. I'll look to be around 70%, as I just don't see many games that Lamar is going to put up a dud. Now, going back over here and looking at DraftKings, if you have Lamar in the captain spot, I don't mind pairing him, but I do want to pair him with at least one of his teammates. You can go Derrick Henry. Those two put up some huge scores in 2024. You can go Zay Flowers. You can go Mark Andrews. You can go Rashad Bateman. That's about where the list is going to stop in smaller field for me. And then looking at larger field GPPs, your 5,000 man plus entries, you're going to want to go to, DeAndre Hopkins. You can even mix in Justice Hill, who had a great game with Lamar last year. Keaton Mitchell coming off the injury list from last season. You could put him in there as well. Charlie Collier, given that Isaiah Likely is out. You can even get a little funky in those larger fields, the much larger $20 entry, 500K up top. You can put in a Tylan Wallace or Devontae Walker. Looking next at the running back position for the Baltimore Ravens, you can consider Derrick Henry in the captain spot. He would be my third favorite captain overall. So in my 3 max sets, he will be my third captain that goes in those. You're also looking at Justice Hill. As we scroll down, you're looking at Keaton Mitchell, and you were looking at Rasheen Ali, sorry. Ali is going to be your larger field. I mean, you're much larger, the Millionaire Maker, the 500K, whatever it is for Sunday night. Just a dart throw in large GPPs. About the same thing here with Keaton Mitchell. I'm not, if he was $1,000 cheaper, he would be in play for me in smaller field tournaments, but he's not. Sitting at 2K, and we just don't know what we're going to get. Last time we saw him on the field, he looked like a shell of himself to end last season. I mean, he didn't get on the field much at all. Did have this 5.8 game, but he's just going to be a large field dart throw for me as well. So these two guys we can go ahead and take off the list. I would consider Justice Hill in smaller field GPPs. As you see here in week 20, he put up a 7.7, and at 3K, that's not going to kill you. But if you look at week 4, a 21.6, had 6 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown in week 4, and that right there will get you up to the top 1% in those smaller field GPPs. So don't consider him as a mistake in smaller entry at this $3,000 salary. I would consider him in smaller fields. And then Derrick Henry, as we talked about, would be my third favorite captain. Pulling up his captain ownership for tomorrow night. Looks like he's going to be at about 13%. I don't mind that at all. I'll probably look to be over the field on him, as I only have 4 captains that I'm considering for Baltimore. I'll probably be about 15%, something like that, on Derrick Henry for tomorrow night in the captain spot. Looking at the flex, he's coming in at around 39%. I'll look to be at about 45 on him. Again, this is not a type of player that's just going to come out and put up a dud, so I don't mind getting him in there as well. If we look at Justice Hill, he's about 17% in the flex. I don't mind being at around 20% on him. And again, with Mitchell and with Rasheen Ali, those are just guys you're going to want to mix in as you see fit in much, much larger field GPPs. Next up, we have the wide receiver position here for the Baltimore Ravens. We have Zay Flowers. We have Rashad Bateman. Those two guys are the only guys that I would consider in smaller field GPPs, which we will get to in a second. You have DeAndre Hopkins coming over from Kansas City. You have Tylan Wallace, and then you have Devontae Walker. Wallace and Walker will be much larger field. Again, the 500K type entry GPPs. Those guys will be mixed in, but as far as smaller field, they have literally no upside. I mean, 0 points there, and then we didn't even play in week 4. So again, just a dart throw there. Tylan Wallace did put up 3.7 in the playoffs and got on the field a little bit, and then he did have a 0 in week 4. So as you can see, just another dart throw for large field GPPs. DeAndre Hopkins, even though he was with Kansas City last year, did play Buffalo twice and put up 2 duds, I believe, with 2.1 and 5.9. At 4.2, I'm just going to prefer Justice Hill at 3K more than I will DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't mind mixing Hopkins in. If you're playing a 5,000 man field, I don't mind getting some Hopkins from 5,000 field all the way up to the millionaire maker. But if I'm playing a 200 man field, DeAndre Hopkins will not be on my list at all. Looking at Rashad Bateman, 16.6 in the playoffs against Buffalo. And then in week 4, he put up a 3.3. If you get the 16.6, you're doing fine. If you get the 3.3, that lineup's dead. Don't mind mixing him in smaller fields, as he was a touchdown monster last year. And Buffalo did give up the 4th most passing touchdowns to opposing teams in 2024. So don't mind getting Rashad Bateman in smaller field. Look to be around the field on him. He's not a player I want to be overweight on, and he's not a player I'm considering in the captain at all. Pulling up his ownership for the flex spot for tomorrow night, he's sitting at 13% currently. I'd want to be around 15% on him. I want to be slightly over the field at that number, and his salary is not terrible at $5,800. But again, not considering him in the captain spot. Zay Flowers is a player I'm considering in the captain spot, but I only want to do that in those 5,000 field, entries. I might consider him in like a 2,000 man if you want to get frisky and just, take some dart shots at trying to win number 1 overall. If he just has a game where he just goes off, his captain ownership is sitting at around 5%. So you're going to be different. Just getting in the gate with Zay Flowers at the captain position. I don't hate it. His flex ownership is sitting around 37, 38%. Don't mind getting around 40% on him. Be a player I want to be about the field on. If we look at his game logs last year, he was hurt for the playoff game, but in week 4, he put up a massive score of 2 fantasy points against Buffalo. Don't hate a player like Zay Flowers. He can have some decent games. I mean, he had a 32.7, which is going to win you a tournament at 5% captain ownership, and he had a 21.5. It's just kind of hit and miss with this guy. Another 25.4, another 22 here. So he does have games that, he can put up a winning GPP score. It's just not going to happen that often, and I do prefer Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the captain spot to Zay Flowers. Looking at the tight end position for Baltimore, you have Mark Andrews and you have Isaiah Likely, who has been ruled out already, and you have Charlie Kolar. Charlie Kolar is a guy that if you need salary savings, he's probably going to be one of the first guys I'll look at. But majority of the time, he's just going to be a large field GPP entry type player. Mark Andrews is going to be a guy where I will consider him in smaller fields, predominantly in the flex spot in that type of setting. But I would consider him in the captain in your larger field, 2,000, 5,000 millionaire maker type contest. I would consider Mark Andrews as a viable captain. Looking at his captain ownership, it's expected for tomorrow night. He's sitting at around 8%, which is a little bit much for me. I don't hate it. In the larger field stuff, I'll probably be around about the field on that 8%. But if you want to get him in smaller field, just like we talked about with Zay Flowers, it's going to immediately make your team different. And looking at those squads, if you can get him and you have Lamar in the flex, same thing with Zay Flowers. If you have a Flowers captain, you're going to want Lamar in the flex. Neither one of those guys are going to be rushing the ball in, even though Mark Andrews has been known to do a tush push every once in a while. But you're going to want to make sure that you have Lamar in those teams where you have Flowers and Andrews in the captain spot. So don't mind throwing Andrews in the flex or in the captain spot, just depending on field size. Next up, you have, what's this guy's name? Tyler Loop, who's going to be taking the spot for Justin Tucker and his situation, we'll call it, and not being with the team any longer. Loop is a guy where you can just mix him in. I'm not going to be over the field on him. I'll look to be around about the field as we don't know much about him. Buffalo was the best team in the league at defending the kicker position last season. So it's not going to be something where I'm going to be over the field. He's definitely not a captain option or anything of that nature. In smaller field stuff, if you want to mix him in as a mid-salary guy, don't mind that. And then larger field, like I've already talked about, I'll be about the field on Tyler Loop. And as we pull up the Ravens defense here, going against Buffalo in week number 20, they put up 1. And then in week number 4, they put up 9. If you get the 9 score, that'll keep you afloat. But at this, $6,600 salary, I will be probably below the field on the Ravens defense tomorrow night. Looking at their ownership, they're going to be around 16, almost 17%. I'll be at about 15. I don't want to get too crazy in that they could score a defensive touchdown at any time, but I'll be about 15%. And then going back to Tyler Loop, he's projected for around 7% in the flex. I would want to be around, 15%. I try to, unless the game is different or something of that nature, I try to be around 15% ownership in the flex on every kicker and every defense in each game. So this is going to be something where we're just going to mix those guys, the kicker and the defense in as flex options for Baltimore. Going back to review a little bit on Baltimore here again, captain in order of preference would be Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews. And actually, these guys are super close between Flowers and Andrews. So if you want to flip 3-4 there, I don't mind that at all. Talking about smaller field, I would go, 3 max. I would have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and then one player for Buffalo we'll talk about here in a second. If you're getting to the 2,000 field entries and you want to put a Zay Flowers or a Mark Andrews in there, I don't mind mixing those guys in. If you're doing 20 max sets, I would have probably 1 or 2 of Andrews and Flowers. I would have probably 4 or 5 Henry, and I would have 6 or so Lamar Jackson entries in your 20 max sets. If you are going to have Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, you want to make sure that you're putting one running back or pass catcher in the flex, and that he obviously can break a game through the air or on the ground. I don't mind mixing any of the guys that we talked about with Lamar in the captain spot. If you have Henry in your captain spot, you don't have to shy away from Lamar in the flex, as those two put up some massive scores last year. If you have Zay Flowers in the captain spot, you want to ensure that you have Lamar Jackson in your flex. If you have Mark Andrews in the captain spot, you can put a lineup in without Lamar in the flex spot, and that Mark Andrews has done the tush push in the past. But I will look to have Lamar in most of my Mark Andrews captain spot lineups, and that you're already going to be different if you have if you have Mark Andrews up top. You're already going to be different, and you can put Lamar in the flex and eat some of that great chalk there with Lamar. Going over to the Buffalo side, and my favorite captain on the board altogether is going to be Josh Allen, and that he just does so much for this team. If he were to go down, they go from being a Super Bowl contender to probably missing the playoffs. And in week 20, he put up 19.08 against Baltimore, and then in week 4, he put up 8.3. So not great scores there, but look at this. He's got a 21 and 25, a 22, a 44, a 54. It's just most of these other guys outside of sometimes Derrick Henry and then Lamar Jackson, none of these guys have the upside that Josh Allen has. And this is just a spot where if you put Allen in the captain, he could obviously break the board. If you do have Josh Allen in the captain, I don't mind going James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, Josh Palmer. Don't mind putting Prater in there as the kicker. If you want to get frisky in larger field, you can put Knox in there. Curtis Samuel, Ty Johnson's a good option there as well. So you have a lot of guys that you can put in the flex, mix and match to get different in larger field with Josh Allen at quarterback. But Josh Allen is my number one captain, my favorite captain for tomorrow night. And if I'm putting in one entry in smaller field, he would be my preferred captain. If I'm doing 3 max, he will be in there as well. And then I'll look to be over the field in every type of setting altogether. He's coming in at around 27%. I'll probably look to be around 30 in the captain spot on Josh Allen. And then in the flex, he's coming in at 56%. I'll be way over that. I'll be 70%. This is just a spot where unless he gets, God forbid, injured like we had with freaking Xavier Worthy the other night after I talked him up. Thank you, Travis Kelce, for running him over with the truck stick, looking like damn John Cena out there with the full flying forearm into him. Anyways, if you have Allen, he's just not going to put up a dud. He's not going to put up a dud. He did last year once against Baltimore. I know I just read it off, but I'm just saying, you know, if he scores less than 10 fantasy points, I'd be freaking shocked. And if he scored 50, nobody would bat an eye. So my favorite captain for tomorrow night is going to be Josh Allen. Looking next at the running back position, you have James Cook, you have Ray Davis, and you have Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson and Ray Davis are just going to be salary savers. Don't mind mixing them in if you need salary for smaller field tournaments. I mean, you can flip a coin between Justice Hill and Ray Davis. I would probably prefer Justice Hill just slightly, depending on ownership. And you can even mix in Ty Johnson in small field tournaments as well, as Ty Johnson catches a lot of passes out of the backfield for this Buffalo team. And Baltimore did give up, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth most passing touchdowns to the running back position in 2024. And looking over the game log in week 20, Ty Johnson put up a 4.9. That's not going to kill you at 2,400, and he had a 6.3 in week 4. So some, solid games at that price tag. Won't be someone that I'll have in the captain position at all, so we can go ahead and take him off the list. Ray Davis, an 8.9, not bad there, and then a 1.1 in week 4. The only thing about 1.1 is it can sink your salary or sink your roster at 3,200, but I don't see him putting up, 1.1. I think he's probably going to be somewhere in like the 5.6 range, some along those lines. He's not going to be a captain option for me, but I will look to mix him in the flex. And let me pull these guys up real quick and give you guys a bit of an ownership review here. We'll see what I got here. Ray Davis at 20%. I'll probably be slightly under the field. I'll probably be at 15, 12% on him. And then Ty Johnson's going to be 12%. Again, I'll probably look to be 8 to 10%. So slightly under the field on those guys. And as we look up at James Cook, he is projected 26% ownership in the flex and 2% ownership in the captain spot. So looking at Cook, week 20, he put up 11.2, and week 4, 5.8. He's one of those guys that in those 2,000 field entries or those 20 max entries, I will have a captain James Cook in there, because if he does have one of those games, again, coming in at where we talk about 2% ownership in the captain, that's just something. If he puts up a 30 spot, that could break the slate, break the board, and you're talking about a top 1% outcome. If I'm playing 100, 200, 500 man field, even at 500 man, you can start to consider him, at one captain entry. But if I'm playing your smaller field tournaments, I'm not getting to Cook in the captain spot there. Don't mind having Allen in the flex if you have a James Cook lineup, in that he does have some pass catching upside as well. So James Cook is in consideration for the captain spot, but not going to consider him in much smaller field GPPs. Looking at the wide receiver position for Buffalo, we have Khalil Shakir, we have Keon Coleman, we have Josh Palmer, we have Elijah Moore, and we have Curtis Samuel. Samuel and Moore will be guys that I'll mix in larger field GPPs, but nothing that I'm going to play in smaller field, is I don't know how much playing time they're actually going to see. Elijah Moore comes over from Cleveland, had some all right games last year, but I think this guy is what he is at this point, and I don't think there's a lot of upside there. So we're going to take him off the board. Again, just a mix and match flex play. Curtis Samuel scored at 2.9 and 3.5 against Baltimore last season for Buffalo. So again, just another one of those guys where you're probably going to get a couple of points. If you're telling me I can get him at 2,800 in the flex or Justice Hill at 3K, I'm going to have so much Justice Hill, it's not even going to be funny. So we're going to get away from Curtis Samuel there. You have Josh Palmer coming over from the Chargers. He has some upside, I guess, 14.3, 13.8 at 5,400, but he's not a player that I'm going to look to be way over the field on. You see, he played Baltimore here in week number 12 and put up 6.8. He's going to be a guy that I'll probably be around about the field. If we pull up his flex ownership, and none of these wide receivers that we've talked about so far for Buffalo are going to be in captain consideration, but 21% in the flex, that's something where I'm going to be looking to be under the field. I'll probably be around 15%. I just don't think he has a massive upside. So flex option for me, if you have to get to him in smaller field stuff, I don't hate it as a flex option, but he would not be my preferred option in smaller field. Keon Coleman, I'd love to see the upside that we keep talking about, but 1.5 here in week 20 and 8.1 in week 4. In large field stuff, if you're talking 500K entries, I'll have a couple of Keon Coleman captain lineups, but he's not going to be in any of my small field stuff in the captain spot. Don't mind mixing him in the flex, but again, not a preferred option. Khalil Shakir is another guy that I would consider in the captain spot. You see a 12.7, and then back in week 4, a 10.2. It would be, it's got to be a 5,000 entry field before I'm starting to talk about Khalil Shakir in the captain spot. If you do have Shakir in the captain spot, you're going to want to look to put Josh Allen in the flex, but not over the field on Khalil Shakir at all. Pulling up his captain ownership, we're talking about 4, almost 5%. So, I'm sorry, that's for Keon Coleman. So 4 or 5% for Keon Coleman. I'd be under that. I'd be at 2 or 3%. And then Khalil Shakir, you're talking 1.7. I'd probably be over on him. I'd look to be at 3, 4, 5% on Khalil Shakir in the Millionaire Maker for tomorrow night. But not, neither one of these guys I'm going to get way over the field on in the captain spot. And then looking at the flex, you have 35% on Keon Coleman and 28% on Khalil Shakir. I would probably be around about the field on Keon Coleman and slightly over on Khalil Shakir. So we're probably talking 35% and 30% on those two guys in the flex spot. Going next to the tight end position, you have Dalton Kincaid and then Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox is just a guy who has fallen off not so gracefully. He had 1 fantasy point and 1 fantasy point last year in both matchups against the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to be a guy that I would mix in large field, but do not want to get to him in smaller field stuff. Much, much, much prefer Justice Hill at 3K versus Dawson Knox at 3,600. Dalton Kincaid is a guy where in like your huge field entries, if you want to put in 1 or 2 Dalton Kincaid captain lineups, I don't absolutely hate it, but it's not going to be something I'm going to look to do a lot. 2.1 in week 20 and 9.7 in week 4 at $8,400. I think you're just getting what you're paying for. With Dalton Kincaid, he'll be a flex option, and I'll be right about the field on him. Pulling up his flex ownership for tomorrow night, he's currently sitting at 22%. I think that's about right. I'll probably be 20, 25% on him. It's not going to be something where I'm going to be over the field on him at all. Just not high on him as a player. He's had a ton of opportunity and just hasn't taken advantage of it to this point. Next up, we have Matt Prater at the kicker spot for the Buffalo Bills. This is another one of those spots where, Baltimore gave up, 7, 8 fantasy points per 7.65 to be exact fantasy points per game to the kicker position in 2024. Prater's coming over, taking over for an injured Bass. It's just not a spot where I'm going to be getting over the field on him. I mean, 8, 14, 9. No captain ownership here on Prater. Looking at his flex ownership, they don't even have him projected. So, I mean, I would say he's probably going to be around 9%. Again, I'll look to be at about 15% if he's starting tomorrow night, and that's going to be what it is. Will not have any in the captain spot at all. And then the Buffalo defense to close things out here. 8 fantasy points in week 20 and then -1 in week 4. Another one of those, we're not going to put them in the captain spot and get cute or anything of that nature, but probably mix them in around 15% in the flex just in case they happen to luck into a defensive touchdown or a fumble recovery or Lamar throws them a pick 6, something along those lines. But I'll be about 15% on them. And if we look at their ownership they're expected around 6%. So I'll be over the field on it just in case. I will say they are priced up a bit at 7,500, so I might rethink that and be around 8, 10%. So don't love them there at 7,500 with that increased price tag. And then as we go back over our captain ownership here for Buffalo, my favorite captain overall, Josh Allen. You can consider James Cook. You can consider Shakir and Coleman, and even Dalton Kincaid. So Kincaid, Coleman, Shakir, all larger field GPP captains for me. If you're in that 2,000 man field, you can put a James Cook in those 20 max. And then my favorite captain of the entire game is Josh Allen. So to do a quick rundown and quick breakdown on these guys again, favorite plays here for 3 max entries in the captain spot is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry. If you have some 20 max teams, again, you want to go Allen, Jackson, Henry, Cook, Flowers, and Andrews. And then if you're in the larger field stuff, you can get all the guys that we just talked about: Allen, Jackson, Henry, Cook, Flowers, Andrews. You can also mix in Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. But that is about the extent of the captain ownership for me. If you want to put in like one or two in huge field entries with Rashad Bateman and Dalton Kincaid, don't hate it. But my main entries will have Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry, and then I'll follow up in larger field with Cook, Flowers, Shakir, Andrews, and Coleman. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 captains for tomorrow night. That's going to do it for tonight's episode, breaking down Sunday Night Football. Hopefully, you guys got something out of the content. If you did, like the video and subscribe to the channel, as much of you have started to do already, and I appreciate that so much. Going to be breaking down DFS content over on DraftKings for every slate throughout the NFL season. Might start doing game by game breakdowns for the main slate as well, and posting those individually, as posting that large clump of every breakdown of every game tends to be a longer video, hour, 2 hours. So may consider starting to do like a game by game breakdown, even for the main slate. So you can hop on, watch a 5 minute video as you're doing whatever you're doing, you know, and get some information without having to be bogged down for an hour or 2 hours listening for an entire breakdown. Again, appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully you got something out of the content, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.